So as adults, when we hear them say that we didn't prepare them, they're not altogether wrong. And we are not at fault. It isn't an issue of blame or shame. It's an issue of not knowing. Welcome back to When Our Adult Children Walk Away. This is a podcast dedicated to one of the most painful and one of the least talked about experiences a family can go through, estrangement. I'm Dr. Janet Steinkamp, and if you're new to our community, please know that this is a no guilt, no shame, no blame space. Today, I want to step back from the arguments and the hurt feelings and ask a bigger question. Not what our adult children believe, but what world they came of age in. When did they become adults? What is the world like today? Because the ground shifted under them. The economy, the technology, the pressure, the pace, all of it looks different from the world that many of us stepped into as young adults. And when we forget that, we can mistake a different reality for a personal rejection. So today, let's look at the world our adult children actually live in. Not to excuse anything, just to understand. If you've felt the distance and couldn't quite name where it came from, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. If you've ever found yourself wondering, why does my adult child see the world so differently than I do? You're certainly not alone. I'm often asked about why conversations around major life decisions seem to be so triggering and so emotionally charged. So many cracking eggshells when we bring up these topics, right? Like career choices, financial decisions, our relationship with our adult child, or maybe their relationship with other people. We wonder why milestones like financial independence, marriage, home ownership, or raising children seem like more complicated issues or topics than when we were growing into our own adulthood as parents. It is easy to jump to or make assumptions about why and what their decisions are. But it's risky and perhaps unfair to make those assumptions. Every person experiences the world through their own history, values, the successes and failures, and through our dreams. For parents, we experience our adult child with our own dreams for their future, for what life will look like for them as an adult. This is exactly the topic of today's episode. Our adult children are navigating a world that's very different from the one we became adults in. And I would go so far as to say different than the one that we prepared them for. Now, before this ruffles feathers, let me explain. First, it is a fact that parents raise children not knowing what the world will look like for them as adults. We may have a sense, we may think we can anticipate, guess, maybe even bet on what the future will look like, but we just really don't know. I mean, the easiest proof is the pandemic, right? We had no idea there would be a pandemic. Research said there might be, but we certainly didn't believe it. And there we were. So let's just look at that a little more closely. If your parents were born in the 30s or 40s, they raised you through the lens of the Great Depression and the following economic boom. If you're a baby boomer or on the cusp of being a member of the Gen X generation, then your parents raised you in the civil rights movement, the pressures for dual income relationships or households. It was the era of free love. It was pre-AIDS, pre-HIV. We were in the throes of Vietnam. Life was very different than what it is now. And that's the lens that likely you were raised in, like me. So then we raise our children through our experience, through our lens. So let me ask you this. As parents who are 45-ish to 75-ish, what part of your parenting when your children were young prepared you for those things? For AIDS, HIV, gender fluidity, sweeping political changes and unrest, even polarization, and the unstable economy we find ourselves in. We did not anticipate these things when our children were young. So as adults, when we hear them say that we didn't prepare them, they're not altogether wrong. And we are not at fault. It isn't an issue of blame or shame. It's an issue of not knowing. So let's continue this conversation by examining some of the economic and social pressures that many of our adult children face today, and in turn, how the changing world is seeping into our relationships with them. It's no wonder that we cannot have serious conversations about the world with our adult children without there being some stress and tension. It's no wonder. So let me make a point here quickly, and that is this. Understanding those differences does not require us to abandon our own values. I am not asking you to excuse unhealthy behavior, lower your expectations for respect in your relationship. I'm simply saying this information provides important context. If you are a regular listener or new to our community, please look beyond simple explanations for estrangement. Understanding this larger context can help become more curious, less reactive, and better prepared to communicate in ways that preserve individual dignity, maintain mutual respect, and protect a healthy adult relationship. Let's dig into the economic pressures of today. And these are real, right? These are real. And they're different for us as parents than they are for adult children in how they impact our lives. So if we look at our adult children, we can look at the rising housing costs, student loan debt, higher childcare expenses. When my children were little, if it was $600 a month, I was terrified about how we were going to pay that. Now it's easily $2,000 a month for childcare. It's extraordinary to me. We need to consider that take-home wage, the money we actually bring home into our household, has not kept pace with inflation. We have less predictability in our career paths. When I started out as a guidance counselor in the 80s, we told students as they graduated that they should anticipate changing jobs about 5 times in their career. What we say now, based on U.S. Department of Labor and Statistics, is that people will change jobs on average 17 times in their career, and that they may actually change the topic or the area of their jobs into completely different industries. Our adult children find themselves with less financial security and delayed independence. They are dependent on their parents longer, or they become dependent on social services when they don't expect to do that to bridge the gap while they're trying to get their feet on the ground. And there's greater uncertainty about the long-term financial impact of what's happening in people's career today. Meaning, as parents in particular, when we start looking at retirement, it's very different than what we used to expect. When I started my career like you, we didn't know what the economy would look like in today's world. So now when people talk about retirement, it's very different. Okay, that's the economy. Now let's talk about some of the social pressures. And these have changed dramatically. There have been unprecedented changes in the level of social comparison, where we used to talk about keeping up with the Joneses, and that was based on our neighbors, the people at work, maybe the people we knew from the schools. Today, it is a constant inundation of messaging about what success looks like, how quickly success should come, who gets to decide what success is and who controls success. And this isn't just local, this is global. We are getting messages through social media and technology every day. For our adult children, it can be anything from Alexa sitting on the counter to the podcast that they're listening to on the way to work. The messaging is everywhere. It's pervasive. And so that means for our adult children, they don't really get a break from that. They're constantly being told that they need to measure up and what the measurement is. It's much more difficult then to sort out what we want as individuals from what we're being told we should want. Okay, so here are some of the things that the messaging is telling our adult children and us, but parents of adult children today are typically later into their careers, and so they don't feel some of these things quite as intensely. So our adult children are being told that they need to build a successful career quickly. Again, success is defined by social media. Our adult children are being told they need to achieve financial security directly out of high school or college, that they don't start on the lowest rung of the ladder, that they begin earning an income that will sustain a lifestyle that measures up. They are told they need to be exceptional, even extraordinary parents. They don't get to make mistakes anymore. That's one of the messages that is coming through social media. And so it only makes sense that they look at parents as being flawed, not preparing them, not being perfect, being overly involved, having standards that were unattainable. This messaging around parenting is driving a wedge between us. And so we need to navigate that, right? Our adult children are trying to navigate all of this in real time. Our adult children are being told that they need to maintain healthy, happy, and satisfying relationships. The myth of a happy, lifelong partnership is incredibly different than it used to be. The expectation to be happy is outweighing the thought of managing conflict, sharing competing values or priorities, and navigating that together as a couple. Exceptional, happy, satisfying, healthy. Perfection. No one's perfect. No relationship is perfect. The messaging is saying that people need to stay socially and politically informed. I don't disagree with that. Being informed used to mean reading the newspaper, watching the nightly news or maybe the morning news, maybe listening to the news during the day to see what the weather's doing. Now, in order to be socially and politically informed, people are inundated with news shows. Which news show is most neutral? What are the different polarized political parties saying? What's going on around the world, different countries? Who's the leader? What shift in regime is going on? It's so complex and dense that managing to stay socially and politically informed becomes quite a task. So presenting this image of success, perfection, happiness to the world, right? Because when you post to the world, it's almost impossible. It's no wonder our adult children are feeling immense pressure. And when we come in as the parents and say, well, what about this? Have you considered this? And question their decisions, it's often one thing too many, one more pressure that starts the crack. And by the way, as parents, we're not getting out of this free. We're also being inundated by these messages of comparison and perfection, but in a different way, because we are later in our career and we are moving into retirement or the retirement years, hopefully. We are inundated by messages about what retirement looks like. What if we choose to work into those years? What if we need to work into those years? Is that failure? What does retirement look like? Does it infer travel, luxury? What should our senior year look like? Believe me, social media is happy to tell us that. So living under these constant expectations of achievement can obviously contribute to the anxiety, the burnout, and the emotional exhaustion we're all feeling around relationships. We all come into our relationships a little more taxed, a little more high-strung, a little more fragile. So I want to go back to the idea of understanding this context and why we're even talking about this. The point is that understanding behavior is not the same as excusing behavior. Understanding behavior means that we come into the conversations with more resilience, more empathy, more capacity to listen, and hear the other person's experience. It does not mean that we are going to change our values, that we have to agree with them, that we have to agree with their decisions. The decisions, though, are the adult child's, both the responsibility and the consequences, just like they are for us. And so, unless we're being invited into the conversation about making decisions, about choosing a partner, a career, a home, the list is exhausting. Unless we're invited to that party, we don't really get to join. We can inquire, be curious, ask questions, open, loving, kind, compassionate, respectful questions. We don't get to be the decision maker, or even in many cases, we're not their counsel. Adult children are choosing the counsel of other people. Let's go back to the idea of curiosity. Curiosity is amazingly powerful. It helps us build bridges. It helps us send the message to the person we're talking to that they are important and what they're saying is important. What they are experiencing and need from us is important. We begin to understand their obstacles and how we might be able to contribute to resolving some of the obstacles. Again, on invitation, but we can make the offer. Is there anything I can do to help? Here's a resource I know of. Is that something that might be helpful to you? And again, curiosity doesn't require agreement. It doesn't require us to think it's a good idea. It's only asking and learning for better understanding. One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves as parents is the willingness to understand our adult child's world. It's a gift to them and it's a gift to ourselves. It protects our relationship. It insulates us and our adult child from some of that outside messaging and the pressures of social media. There's no question about the economic uncertainty, the technological changes going on, social media, AI, shifting cultural expectations, evolving definitions of adulthood, and that all of that has created challenges that influence families today, and in particular, our relationships with our adult children. Recognizing these realities does not mean abandoning our individual values. You keep hearing me say that. It's important. We don't need to overlook unhealthy behavior. We don't need to assume that external pressures alone explain family estrangement. Rather, understanding this reminds us that estrangement is almost always shaped by multiple interacting influences. Economic and social pressures are two significant contributors. The more we understand about this, the better equipped we are to replace the assumptions with curiosity and communicate with greater emotional safety and build relationships grounded on mutual respect, accountability, trust, and reciprocal boundaries. So here's what I hope you take away from today's conversation. Curiosity is not agreement. It never was. It's simply the willingness to ask what your adult child is up against before deciding what their choices mean, before deciding whether you agree with them or not. That one shift from certainty to curiosity changes almost everything in the conversations that follow. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation and in this episode. I hope you'll listen to more. If this episode gave you something to sit with, I'd love for you to keep the conversation going. Bree and I host a live virtual office hour session on Sundays where we explore topics exactly like this one together in a space that's respectful, educational, and supportive. It's one of the best ways I know to feel less alone about this. Come join us. We'd love to have you. And if you found this information helpful, please subscribe. You can find the podcast on YouTube at Dr. Janet Steinkamp or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you know a parent who's quietly carrying an estrangement story, share this episode with them. Sometimes just knowing that someone else is asking the same questions makes all the difference. Everything you need, all the links, upcoming workshops, office hours, and more is at whenouradultchildrenwalkaway.com.
Thank you for listening to When Our Adult Children Walk Away, presented by Dr. Janet Steinkamp in partnership with Balancing Life's Issues and produced by me, Greg. Do you want to connect with Dr. Janet? You can find resources, connect with her directly, and learn more about the work we do at whenouradultchildrenwalkaway.com. And be sure to follow and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts.